Good morning, everyone. I think we're recording. It is now noon Eastern time. So we're going to get started. I'm just going to ask you guys to introduce yourselves. And while you're introducing yourselves, I would like those people in the audience watching to introduce yourself also. Yeah, let's start with Alicia.
Oh, Lord. Well, I am Alicia Brown, the Joy Guru, which is my media platform. I am the CEO of Fruition Publishing Concierge Services. I'm a child abuse survivor. So I believe in spreading the message of positivity, as well as showing women and our clients how to actually create their own businesses so they can actually have their own schedule the way they like to and produce the income that they want, and hopefully to reduce the gender pay gap. Also very important to this session is I'm a part-time caregiver to my mother, who was diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia, and also my sister that suffers from depression.
Fantastic. Thank you for sharing, and thank you for being with us today. I know what we're in for because I've been watching your sessions yesterday. So. It's going to be awesome.
We'll have fun.
Thank you, Susanna, our dear new mama, and also existing mama to a 3-year-old. But please introduce yourself. And
hi, my name is Susanna Monsalm. I'm originally from Poland. I've been in New York and now in Southampton for the last 14 years. I am a mom of a 3.5-year-old and 4-month-old baby twin girls. So 3 girls, raising a nice little tribe of sisters. And before becoming a meditation and hypnobirthing teacher, which is my current profession, I was a fashion model for over 15 years. And as wonderful as my career was, it led me to a few mental health issues like eating disorders, panic attacks, depressive episodes. And so instead of going the Western medicine route and seeking for pills for my conditions, I decided to look for more alternative healing techniques, and just try anything that was out there for the more holistic modalities. And something that really stuck was meditation and a consistent practice every day, twice daily, 20 minutes. This was something that I saw the best results from, and something that I could confidently say that probably saved my life, for sure changed my life for the better. And ever since then, I've been really passionate about mental health, women's mental health. Looking at the pressures that we're faced with today in the modern world as women, and always looking for new ways to deal with those issues. But ever since then, I became a meditation teacher and a hypnobirthing teacher because those were the 2 modalities that really were close to my heart. When it comes to hypnobirthing, I gave birth to my older daughter using hypnobirthing, and found it so powerful. Very simple technique, but very, very profound. And so I started digging deeper into the philosophy, and quite organically I became a teacher. And recently I gave birth to my twins using hypnobirthing at a hospital, but unmedicated and natural birth, which I'm super proud of. That's a little bit about me.
Girl, fly that flag for the rest of your life.
Yes. She did it. Congratulations. Yes.
Thank you.
So I am Katie Kermitzos. I am a mom of 2. I have a 5.5-year-old and a 2.5-year-old, and I'm also an entrepreneur. I've in some way, shape, or form owned my own business since I was about, 30 years old, 32 years old. I'm 42 now. So a while. I was an entrepreneur before I was a mother. So I love to say that, being a business owner is one of the most difficult, it forces you to do the inside work, and motherhood is exactly the same way. So it was both of those things combined have been incredibly forced evolution for me. But I have just always been a very self-introspective person. and have gone through many, many ups and downs in my life and my career and all sorts of things. I definitely had like the eating disorder in my late 20s and have just always been on the kind of the search for harmony, for inner harmony, outer harmony. And it's never perfect, but I really enjoy that journey. So about almost 3 years ago, we found out we were pregnant with my second girl, and it completely flipped my world upside down and inside out for a lot of different reasons. And in that like shock of things changing, I really dug deep into like, well, what am I doing? And what do I really want to do? I had a business back then that was very different, very, very different. And so in that questioning, I thought about and came up with the idea of the Women's Meditation Network, which is what I do now. So fast forward 3 years later, the Women's Meditation Network is really a media company. But as of now, it is 4 different podcasts: meditation for women, sleep meditation for women, morning meditation for women, and sleep sounds for women, with continual plans to grow, because that's what I do. Anyway, so and that's what it is now. They're podcasts, and I get the privilege of creating, of writing, of producing amazing meditations that are specifically designed for women and are very diverse and also pretty universal journeys in this world. So that's what I do. And I do that while I manage mommyhood and, all of those things that are important to me.
Muted. So Katie is on our Sheconomy apps. We just uploaded all of her podcasts for those of you that are interested in getting her podcasts on a platform now that's available to the bottom billion called Kaios. It's there. So we're so looking forward to showcasing her work and getting it to women and girls in the most underserved and underprivileged areas. There's just so many different directions we can go with this conversation. I think what I'd like to start with is just, in terms of moms and mental health, I wanted Alicia to talk a little bit about her childhood, a little bit about her background, and share with us, tips that you may give to other young women and girls in your similar situation right now during the pandemic, because this is such a big issue and we're not talking about it as much as we should.
My heart actually broke when I saw the children were going to be home, and women as well, because, coming from a child abuse background, and one thing that we don't understand a lot of times is that child abuse is generational. When you're going through it, you're just, your fear, your whatever, and your age, there's certain concepts and things you just don't understand. But then, and I'll say this, families keep a lot of secrets. So I really didn't understand what abuse was. I didn't understand until I got to my teen years. Yeah, this is common in our family, because I'm looking at my grandfather. He acts the same way. This anger, this violence, this threatening, he's the same personality. And my mother really didn't talk about it that much. And then, after my grandmother had passed, visiting the family and finding out some things there, it just, showed me how many different generations that this passed through. So when I look at when we started the pandemic and the kids start having to be at home, and you have the moms who are working from home, to the rest of the world, they were thinking about their stresses and things like that. I was thinking about these children, these women, because they're home with their abusers now. Then a lot of times their incomes are either cut or they may have lost their job altogether. And you're already in a very toxic, a very heated situation, walking on eggshells from day to day. Don't know, what's going to happen. Some of these homes are physically abusive as well. And now you are 24/7 in a home with your abuser. And these people are controlling. So a lot of times your only access to call out for help or to talk was when you went to work and had a phone. Now you don't have a phone. Sometimes to control you, they're cutting off a cell phone. And of course, when you add the stress of money and pressures like that, it just makes things worse. So what is that child supposed to do? One of my safe havens as a child was the local library, which is right down the street. I could have that time. My mother believed in me being an avid reader. So I could just go to the library and just read and escape, at least for that time. Kids couldn't go to the library anymore. So where are they going? Places of refuge like churches, community centers, those were closed. So you put them 24/7 right with their abuser. There was no safe place. And these women, some of the women that wanted to escape the shelters, I know from being a nonprofit executive, we're making donations, we're passing out food. These shelters were stressed. I mean, they most of them function where they're depleted anyway because the problems are so vast and the needs are so great. But you bring a pandemic, they're even more stressed. So, and they have to go through the COVID regulations as well. So sometimes there's not place for these women. There were shortages before. There are definitely shortages now. So coming from that background, I couldn't imagine. So I understood the other stressors people were talking about, but I'm concerned about these children and these women in these abusive homes. This is a life or death matter for them. And just going back a little bit to my background, I look at it when I was 5 years old, my mother had her third nervous breakdown. And then I traced it back to when we talked later, when I was older, she was saying, when I was in college, I used to go home every weekend. And I had a roommate that said, if you keep going home, you're going to have a nervous breakdown. And that was one of the first she did because her home was so stressed and toxic. Her father was a very abusive and violent man. And so I look at how that played out in who she married. And I looked at how that played out in the life that I experienced. And then going to now, we have so many people that are struggling. And definitely my heart goes out to mothers because you're trying to raise your children. But a lot of trauma and things you've been through, you haven't dealt with. And having a mother that is on medication, mental health has a stigma to it. Mental illness has a stigma to it. I remember from a religious perspective, there were people that knew about her nervous breakdowns and her mental health issues. There were people that made fun of her. So imagine trying to go around, navigate life to be well, and then know that people are ridiculing you everywhere you go based on what it is and the places you should be safe. So a lot of times mothers don't have support. And then if you're watching your child go through another abusive situation like you did, and now, in my mother's case, for the majority of my childhood, she was a stay-at-home mom. She gave up her career in order to raise me. And by the time she had my sister, when I was 8 years old, she returned to the workforce part-time. But can you imagine knowing that you don't have the financial security to take your children out in the environment? And I'll end with this. One of the things that shaped my life, and I remember her saying it to this day, she said, and this is when I was, in my 20s and we were really talking. She said, there are times I did think about leaving your father and sending you somewhere else and relocating. But she said, the only place I could go would be your grandfather. And that was just as bad. So I stayed. And then my father passed away when I was 17. So growing up later, and entrepreneurship was not my desired path. Today, I can't see not being an entrepreneur. I love it, but that wasn't my thing. I went to school, did what they told me, get a good job, got a government job, and I was happy with that. But, I just remember hearing her say that. And so it was so important to me to have options, to not be financially bound or restricted. The more options a woman can have makes a big difference, because you don't feel trapped. You have options for your children, and you have options for things like, growing up, it was never a thing for us about vacations, things I do now about vacations, or, even manicures and pedicures in my family, that was seen as a luxury you just didn't need. But it's important for your self-care. My investments in my diet coaches, what I eat, working out, that's seen as luxuries in my family, but it's not. It's things that you need for your mental health, your physical health, all of those things, mind, body, and spirit play together. So, when you're looking at mental health in particular, asking for help, some things you need, it may be something as simple as I need someone to come in and do laundry. That's not a luxury. You have to look at your plate and what your plate's full. You need some people to help you with some other things. Or maybe for you as a mother, it's getting a massage twice a month. That's not a luxury. You deserve it. You're taking care of these kids all the time. And if you're working and you're taking care of children, yeah, you need a little me time. And people say that's self-care. I don't really think it's self-care per se, because there are things like meditation and exercise that I would more or less say are more self-care, but it's time that you need just for your mental stability, to think, to relax, to get back in tune with who you are. So sometimes, just things like that. I didn't see women in my environment doing that growing up, but it's very important to reconnect with who you are as an individual. Balance. And, people say life balance. I don't really think there's a thing. I think we're continually a work in progress trying to balance it all. But I do think that you need to always be in tune with who you are, separate from everything else, separate from mom, separate from entrepreneur, separate from wife, separate from partner. Who am I? What's the time I have with just me? Because I saw the women I grew up that went with mental health issues. They didn't do that. It was just work, 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 take care of the family, make sure he's happy, make sure the kids are happy, make sure they have this. And they're thinking that 24/7. Well, what makes you happy? No one asked that. What do you do to relax? Nobody asked them that. And they were waiting for, of course, you see, I'm doing all this stuff. Someone's going to help me. No, they're not. You need to ask for help. Instead of waiting for everyone, they see, and they're more than happy for you to keep doing everything. So it's, just those are some of the tips for me. Ask for help, take time for yourself just to reconnect to you. And then in the case of the abuse situations, if you're going through that, there are resources out here. All I ask is that you would reach out to those resources, but be safe. Because in this pandemic, especially, there were all type of trackers that a lot of the abusers had now, because you're at home. So they can look at your computer and see where you searched. They can look at the phone and see where you're calling.
Wow.
Yeah. Some of the facilities, though, they would tell you they have special things in their website. So when you would search, it would look up as something else. So if your abuser was looking at your search feed, they couldn't see this was a shelter. But those are just some of the things that women that were trying to leave their homes were going through. Because I'm at home now. At work, you couldn't track while I was watching. At home, you can. So, they're even an exit strategy to get help. Those are some of the considerations you have to think about.
Amazing. So these are super important and vital insights and timely, I should say, because the people watching this, we're going to be sharing this on our YouTube library. And I want them to understand this is not just about moms like myself, quarantined by myself at home. This is about people that are in unsafe situations. We need to talk about this issue, because what's happening to these women is affecting children, and it's intergenerational, like you said. And so really it's up to us to keep it together. Katie, I'm going to let you take this next one and talk about, the stresses and challenges being a mom, an entrepreneur, and just managing everything that you do in this pandemic situation.
Yeah, it's tough. That's the best word that I can use to describe it. Through the lens of mental health, I'll say this to share my experience in hopes really that it lands on the hearts of others listening. I have found it vital for me to do a lot of work to constantly tune into myself, constantly, especially in those first couple of months of lockdown. It was, kids at home, trying to manage with the husband, okay, well, I have to go do this. And then you need to go do this. And I'm the majority parent. And so the primary parent. So it's very natural for me to just take it all of the parenting on. And so it was a lot of literally in any given moment, what do I need right now? What do I need right now? What do I need right now? So, for anyone out there who, from the outside, it can look like, the struggle of trying to, balance it all. And, again, through the lens of mental health, I don't think it's necessarily that. I think it's a constant, tuning into self, recalibrating, which is a practice, which is why I believe that the meditations on my network, on my podcast, have hit so beautifully to the heart of the women listening, because I feel like this is a tool that is desperately needed. You know, the tool of meditation, I really consider meditation a tool to use to get to, first off, you know, yes, get access to calm, get access to a sense of peace, help let go of anxieties, help let go of thought. But ultimately, really what I believe meditation to be is a tool to help you get a really clear connection to self. And in doing that, you really start to practice being able to distinguish between what I call the noise and the voice. And, you know, when we talk about like trying to manage all of these things, you know, that are important in our lives, I think that becomes very central in how we're going about our days. Because if we can start hearing, oh my gosh, especially in those early, you know, months of the pandemic, and especially now. So it's worth noting that I don't do news. Like I don't have a TV that's hooked up to any sort of cable. We stream all the Disney Pluses. Like I don't do news. Like I refuse to do it. I've never been a TV watcher. I'm very proactively managing what information is coming in here because I want to protect this. And so, and I think that that's actually a really important note when it comes to mental health and how we're going about doing our days, because if you allow yourself to ingest all this stuff, whether you're aware of it or not, that's going to affect how you feel, right? So most especially, and you can even ask yourself this question now, like, what boundaries do I need to set so that I can feel good? Like the number one priority is you feeling good, you feeling safe, you feeling just good, really good. That is literally the number one priority, because once you feel like you've gotten a breath, once you feel calm, once you feel like I'm good, you know, like then you can move about life in a very intentional way. And when you don't have that feeling, when you don't feel that way, when you feel like you're crumbling inside because of all the pressures, because of all the tasks, because of the kids screaming in the background, because of, you know, crazy situations that are very dangerous and scary and all of those things, then you freeze. It becomes really hard to maneuver through life. So, you know, so in the case of just really like, quote unquote, managing it all, you know, dissolve all those thoughts. And really, for me, it has been a constant practice of going inside, being able to have the benefit of that calming me down, both physically and mentally, but also most importantly, getting to know myself, getting to know when I hear that whisper of like, say no to that, or when I hear the whisper of, make time for that. Or when I hear the whisper of, oh my God, I need a break. Anything, I call the guards. Like I need a break. I need a break. So, because I'm going to scratch somebody's eyeballs out right now. So I think it's that to me is where mental health starts. And that's the portal where it starts. Like, who am I? How am I feeling? And how can I create boundaries to honor, respect, and guard that?
These are such great tips for everyone that's watching right now, is to really ground, check in with yourself, make sure that you're at your equilibrium, because ultimately you are the most important thing that's in this equation. And if you're not whole, how can you give and how can you receive at the same time, right? So ultimately, very, very good, strong suggestions to everyone listening. Susanna, on that note, you have 3 little ones under the age of 3, keeping it all together. You know, you've got family, you've got your practice, your meditation practice, hypnobirthing practice. Like, tell us what's working for you, and then I'm going to bring Michelle up after you present. Go ahead.
Thank you, ladies, for sharing such wise words. I can only add to those words because this is pure wisdom right here. For me, reframing the self-care and self-love practices as mental hygiene practices really worked. And I see that in my students when we talk about, you know, for example, meditation or spending time outside, riding your bike or whatever works for you. It might be that pedicure and manicure or that massage or somebody doing your laundry. If if we see it as luxury ourselves, or even self-care, self-love practices, it becomes kind of a guilty pleasure, right? If we see it as mental health hygiene, just like brushing teeth, just like washing hands, suddenly it's like, I'm not going to say no to brushing teeth. I have to do it for my well-being, right? Otherwise, I'm going to get all kinds of bacteria in my mouth. If I don't wash my hands, I might pick up COVID or another virus that's flying around. I need to wash my hands to protect myself and protect those in my household and around me. And so now when we add, the pandemic of stress, anxiety, depression, and all kinds of issues that we're dealing with right now, we need to scrub our mind clean daily, whatever that means to us, whatever practice we choose for ourselves. For me, it was meditation. For you, it might be something else. But seeing that as part of our hygiene ritual really helped me. And it really helps the people that I teach to be like, oh yeah, obviously I have to do this, right? Because otherwise I'm going to be unwell. Otherwise the stress is going to overwhelm me and I'm going to develop anxiety about the future and all that stuff. So constantly reminding myself of that really helps me manage and navigate everything that I'm dealing with right now. And we hear that a lot, but I'm just going to remind everybody listening that we first put our oxygen mask on and then we put it on our kids, right? So again, we first check in with ourselves. What do I need right now to not only survive, but to thrive? And then I can address my most loved ones. And with that, it becomes a little tricky, right? Because we want to put ourselves first, and then we put then we bring our kids to the table, but the kids need to eat, so we got to work. So then it becomes this kind of like constant prioritizing. Like I want to hug them, but I also need to work so they can eat. How do I manage that, right? Like right now, it's important to give them a hug, but I'm going to be late for my call. So once again, what you ladies said, once we're grounded in ourselves, then those needs of the moment become so much more clear, and just intuitively we know what to do. And that's how I navigate through my motherhood and professional life and everything else. I go a lot on gut feeling and that like deep connection. Like, okay, what's needed right now? I'm okay. Who's next? What do I do next? And I also try not to multitask too much because I feel like we're very guilty of that as women. We can do so much at once, right? We are capable of that. But when we do so many things at once, when we're holding the baby, stirring the soup, and typing an email with our toes, none of those things are going to get done well. There's a chance that some of those things will be struggling. Like either the baby will be slumping or the soup is going to be like too burnt or something. So we know that we can multitask. And oftentimes we want to give ourselves some extra time in the day. But my advice is to kind of take smaller steps and kind of reduce the multitasking as much as possible, to be present to everything that we do, not only to everyone that we deal with, but to everything that we do, to be fully present with that email, right? So it's as concise and as effective and productive as we can make it. And then we can move on to the next thing that we're fully present for. These are just some of my tools. I mean, I'm not an expert. I'm figuring out as I go. Motherhood is a wild ride. And just being alive in this time is also a wild ride. So yeah, that's what I have to say, I guess.
And you say it with a smile on your face, like, it's like love from your heart and soul. I can feel it. So it's like, it's working clearly. Like this woman's got it under control. Like, all under control. Okay, so I met Michelle in Tulum, Mexico about a week ago, and she is a soul sister. And this woman has been there, done that, and is like crushing it right now. She's a chef. She is a television chef, is about to be a regenerative farmer, was an orphan. I'm going to bring her up now and let her introduce herself. And she's got some wisdom as well that she's going to share with us. Okay, Michelle, you're coming up. Good morning.
Morning, ladies. Thank you so much for having me here. I was not going to be here, but then Anu was like, come on, your sisters are online. Let's do it. So here I am. I got to listen to all of you and so much wisdom there. Like it says on the chat, I'm a Brazilian. I've been here in the US for 19 years. We live on a 90-acre farm, regenerative farming that I practice, and I'm a trained chef, and I'm about to embark on a journey all the way to Africa, Nigeria, Ghana, and Kenya to film my own television show, which will be tracing food from the plate all the way to the farm. And I am fighting every single episode to make sure that we, demonstrate women farmers, because the women farmer has always been there. And we have always been a farmer, but nobody talks about it. So I am to blow the whistle. I have an 18-year-old boy, Julian, which is now in Hawaii. As soon as the pandemic hit, this in Tallahassee, Washington, and his dad is in Hawaii. And 4 days later, he had a ticket and he was already on the plane to Hawaii. And I was just like, And so I have an 8-year-old stepdaughter. That's my husband's daughter. And then I also have a 27-year-old that I raised from 8 to 16 from my first marriage. And my little tidbit that I want to bring in here is that, remember, we as mothers are like, oh, we don't matter, what do you need and what can I do? It's fine, I'm tired. I think that we need to teach our children from very young age that everybody matters, including. So sometimes I have taught my kid from very young age that I am not perfect, that sometimes I'm going to mess up, that he should forgive me because I love him and I'm trying to do my best. So sometimes, it's simple as Robin, the 8-year-old, says, I don't like this dinner, I'm not going to eat it. And instead of telling her, you have to eat it, I say, I am tired. I cooked this dinner with all and care. So if you don't want to eat it, then you might as well just some cereal, because it's now my time to sit down. It's important for them to understand, to become good human beings, to respect their mothers, respect their time, and practice to be that human with the mother and the father that we one day want them to be to the world. I tell that to dads all the time. Are you raising a child that you would like to hang out when they are an adult? Right? Are you raising a spoiled brat that doesn't care about anybody, that, it's just how he is, he gets everything? Well, they're going to be an adult and be like, raised you, right? That's us. So I think it's a big responsibility to, them to understand that son started opening the door for me at the age of 7. Anywhere we went, he opened the door for me. And that's just a small thing for him to understand, hey, you can also do something for me. You are my team too. I'm on your team, but you are on mine. As 18-year-old, he's stuck in his room, doesn't want to go anywhere. And sometimes we have a barbecue or something. I'm like, you're going. He's like, I'm not going. And I'm like, yes, you are going. Because you have to show up for me. So that balance of wanting them to understand that, in Brazil, say one hand washes the other. There's no way to wash one hand like this. It's one hand wash the other. So, your hand to my hand, we can accomplish big things out there in the world. So thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Wonderful. Thank you for being with us. So I want to shift this conversation in terms of proactive steps, going forward, coming out of this highly unusual, unnatural, like things that have forced us beyond our limits, right? And in a way, it stretched our minds. And part of this is a mental health issue, but part of this is also just us growing as humanity. What have we learned from this? Some good takeaways in terms of like how to learn, adapt, use crisis as a form of opportunity. I'm going to let each one of you comment on this, because just as it's been overwhelming, it's also been something very, very positive for each and every single one of us. So I want us to take this in the direction of positivity, what we can learn and how we can improve, and so on and so forth. So what have you struggled with, and what has this pushed you to do, Alicia?
One of the things that I think we can learn from the pandemic is the world was on pause. And sometimes in our heads, we believe we got superhero complex on, we got our cape on, and, God forbid I stop doing this or I don't go as fast as I used to, the whole world is going to blow up. I got to keep going at this pace. Well, with the pandemic, the whole world came to a halt. It didn't matter what part of the country you were in. Everybody was impacted in one way or the other. So that whole thing, I got to operate like this. I got to operate like this. I got to go fast. I got to do everything on my to-do list. What's going to be the impact on my family? What's going to be the impact on the people I serve? Blah, 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 blah. Actually, no, that's not true at all. Because as the pandemic taught, there are things that are really priorities and there are things that are not. There are things that really can wait. There are things that you have to adjust in this moment. But if one thing I learned, you got to pivot. And that's true. We do in business all the time, but it's true in your life. It's true with your family and your commitments. You got to pivot. So some seasons, the first question that a lot of times me and my circles ask, are you okay? Before we talk about the bit, are you okay? I hear this in your voice, or you're looking a little tired. Is everything good with you? Sometimes we need to ask that question about ourselves. And then what are your priorities? What's important? What needs to be done right now? And do you need to be the only person that does it? Another one of our questions, other than are you okay? What help do you need? Okay, who do I need to bring in? How do we need to readjust this to deal with, if you got that overwhelming, well, I got a lot of things on my plate. Okay, what help do you need? Who needs to be brought in? Instead of the superhero thing. And then another thing, I say this to myself, but I want our viewers to understand this as well. You're a freaking superhero. No matter what happened to you and what you endured during this pandemic. I look at some of the people around me, but I'll use myself. I had major surgery in a pandemic and I'm still here. I didn't get sick, but I had major surgery in a pandemic. I healed very well. I was able to take control of my health in a pandemic, diet, exercise, going back to levels and above levels I had years ago. And there are people complaining about, I gained this. Okay, great. A lot of people gain weight during the pandemic, but you also can change that narrative and be proactive and do something to bounce back from what happened. So you are a superhero. And if you saw yourself in that light, regardless of what your situation is, then what that simply says is you have the ability to bounce back from anything. But I think someone said it earlier, is trusting yourself. And a lot of times based on experiences or our past, we don't trust our voice as much as we trust everyone else's. Mm-hmm. It's time to flip that. Trust you, because inside, you really know what's best for you. In situations, even when you're scared or it's the unknown, if you listen to your gut is telling you all the time, don't do that. Watch that person, think twice about that, and then you'll dismiss it. You got to put yourself in that mindset, and someone said being present, where you're listening to that inner core. What is my inner spirit telling me? And stop silencing it, but just trust yourself that you really know the best thing to do, or you can figure it out and listen to you first.
Amen, sister. So I have been keeping an audio journal for almost 5 years now. And I listen to my own voice for a reason, because it's not what someone else tells me. I'm not going to listen to them anyway. It's what I tell myself ultimately. And then I can feel my emotions be like, why were you so crazy that day? Like, why were you so emotional? And it helps me temper and get better and improve, because I am my own frame of reference at the end of the day. I can calculate my goals. I know what I want. And as long as you're grounded and as long as you can center, there's nothing that can shake you, even a pandemic. Like, you just need to center. And this has really been helpful, like putting this event on. I don't know how we're doing. This is our second one in 3 months, and we're going for another one next month. So really just like keeping track of it all, pulling all these new energies together, all these new people together, like really it starts with you first and foremost, your mental equilibrium, and then you can accomplish the world. Susanna, you had a lot that you were juggling, including like being pregnant before the pandemic, and then these newborns, and then business, and everything shifted. Tell us a little bit about, what got you through this and how you got through it. Shifts.
I actually got pregnant a month into the pandemic, which was not a planned pregnancy. Definitely not planned multiple pregnancy. There was a very huge initial shock. And I think what got me through all of it, being pregnant during pandemic with a toddler, and then giving birth at a hospital during a pandemic, and then having newborns also during a pandemic, was constantly changing the perspective from, oh gosh, this is so hard, to what am I grateful for? What is this? What kind of opportunities does this bring for me? Right? So, I feel like a lot of people are complaining, especially mothers. We complain, oh, I never have time to really be fully present with my children, right? I'm missing school shows. I don't know what's going on in their lives. And suddenly we do have time to really engage, and to kind of put everything on a side and be grateful for that opportunity. For me, it was, I'm always missing everything while I'm pregnant. I have to go to sleep at 5 p.m. and I sometimes I don't feel like hanging out with people at all. Suddenly, nothing else is going on. So I'm just doing my job. I'm just growing those babies in the belly, right? So reframing the complaint into positivity and into a state of gratitude helped me so much. And same with giving birth in the pandemic. It's like, oh, what is it going to look like, right? The hospitals are overcrowded, and I'm going to have to wear a mask while pushing. This is insane, right? But
wow.
Yeah. But then, there were some really, really wonderful moments because of that, right? Because we were all much more vulnerable. I feel like maybe if we were not in the pandemic, the doctors and midwives wouldn't let me go for a natural childbirth, right? And the way we spoke with one another was much more human and connected, because we were all in this together. So that was another piece where I was like, wow, I'm so grateful that other human beings can relate to me, and that we have, even if we don't know each other, even if we're strangers, we now have something that we're dealing with, because all of us are dealing with the same thing. We're dealing with this crazy virus and this pandemic and the world being put on pause. So just finding the positive in everything, finding moments of gratitude. Actually, yesterday, my 3.5-year-old was really acting up at breakfast. And as you say, Michelle, like, I don't want to eat that. I don't want this jam. I want the other jam. And I'm like, all right, stop and tell me 3 things you're grateful for. Look, you have food on your table. You have delicious food that somebody cooked for you. The sun is shining, it's spring outside. We have 2 dogs that love us, and we love them. We have love. Like, there's so much to be grateful for. And that's, as a practice for a family, it also works really nice for us as the sacred pause, right? When everybody's going like crazy about their own things, I'm like, no. Everybody, what are you grateful for today? Even if you're 3 years old, tell me. It could be like, I'm grateful for watching Disney Plus and Disney princesses, right? But anything you can name, let's go back to the positive. Let's go back to the grateful. I think that would be my one big tip for this.
Beautiful. And again, you're never too young or never too old to practice gratitude. And I think that is the big lesson of this like global pandemic of ours. You just nailed it. And that's like, of all the horrible things that are happening, all the horrible things, like, we are blessed. We're talking to each other. We have connected, and to be connected to all you beautiful souls. I'm grateful for each and every single one of you, this entire platform, this entire 3 days. Like, I'm just like blowing up. And I called Michelle right before this started in angst. And I was like, please help me. And she's like, this is what we're going to do. And, you know, like to have her with us now in this like session also, it's like, yes, it's just, we're all coming into our power. I think you feel it. I think each and every single one of you feels the divine feminine working through us in its own way. I'm going to let Katie comment on this because she's Madam Meditation. Just, you know, it gives you superpowers. Once you can control your mind, you can basically do anything. So please comment on you know, what's going to take us forward from here.
That's a very good question. From my vantage point, it is the individual from within desire to evolve and to evolve in a very intentional way. And what I mean by that is, and I really want to piggyback off of Susanna's brilliant comments about really focusing on gratitude. And, you know, I talked about the fact that I had an eating disorder in my late 20s. And towards the end of that eating disorder, I remember reading a book, like while I was in recovery, I remember reading a book called Life with Ed. Ed was for ED. It doesn't matter what the book was about. What was so transformative about reading that book and where I was in recovery was, it was the first time that someone offered me the idea that I would actually be grateful for this eating disorder that I had that I was like, you know, kind of concluding, I should say. And I couldn't conceptualize that. I was like, are you kidding me? This has been horrific. There's no way I'm going to be grateful for this. And fast forward, and I would consider that eating disorder like a pretty traumatic, like it was a pretty intense season of my life, right? Fast forward not too many years afterwards, I could legitimately look back and be like, I am so grateful that I had that experience, because I feel like for all the reasons, I'm so much more in tune with my body. I'm an intuitive eater, you know, what a gift that is. Like, there's so many reasons. Like, I got down and dirty, like the recovery process was hard and beautiful at the same time. So I say that because, you know, in the scope of this pandemic, which feels hard, and I'm going to use that there, and there is a lot of yucky and dark stuff that has happened in our world, you know, and it's not like dark stuff has never happened in our world before, but we just have had a magnifying glass on it, and it's been a lot more intense. It's been that intense, traumatic season. And I feel like, you know, from an individual standpoint, doing the work to really get clear about what has been so amazing about this, about my individual life, or about what's going on in the world. Like, what good can I see? How can I accentuate the good and minimize and learn from the bad, right? And use that as a tool to go forward, because that enables us to shift the attitude. To shift our attitude on how we're looking at life in general and our lives in particular. And, you know, I'll say this from a personal standpoint, the reason that I love doing what I do with meditations is because I feel like I am delivering this packaged gift of self-love and calmness to one woman at a time. And I feel like those very deliberate and subconscious, you know, messages that I'm giving to a woman who's listening to that meditation make a difference in her individual experience internally, which make a difference to her experience externally, to those immediately around her, which end up like culminating, if you think about the millions and millions of women who are experiencing that. So how do we, you know, move past this? I feel like it's a turning in, and it's a really focusing in on what has been so good and what actually has come out of it that's been wonderful, what blessings there have been, and allowing that to really shift you and up-level you into a space of intentional living. Like, okay, what have I learned from this? And how can I use this information to keep creating a life that I am creating, not one that is storied to me, not one that is scripted for me, but like, wow, like that, like I get to create this. So yeah, it's in my humble opinion, it's about like going inward and really asking those questions and allowing that to then come into your life as you live every day.
Introspection, I mean, and intention and all these things that are intertwined. It's so critical because it's in yoga, they have this term that's called drishti. And drishti is like that focal point, and you're not going to get to that focal point unless you set your intention, your goal, and whatnot. So this is like a very Eastern Sanskrit, like it's great. And I've been looking at the pandemic saying, where are we headed? What is it that we want as not just humans, women, like, the future, this is us. And we're givers of life. And, it all begins right here. So if we don't set our drishti, we're just going to go back to what was there before. And we don't want that. We absolutely do not want that. I want Michelle to talk about resilience. I mean, that's the one quality that I think each and every single one of us needs. And we talked about pivoting, but she's had so many points in her life, and she's a new sister, but an old soul. And I've known her from many lives before, and she's a warrior. And I'm going to let Michelle tell us a little bit about resilience, not just pandemic, but just, things in your life that have taught you to adapt to what's happening now. Maybe that can shed some light and wisdom on some of the women that are listening to us right now. Please, Michelle.
So a couple of points there in my life. One, I lost my mother at the age of 4 to a car accident. She was going to pick me up at the daycare. She never came. So that's something that has kind of shaped myself as that always like, oh, let me prove you that I'm good. I was the kid that was like, hey, auntie, let me tell you how good I am so you can give me a cookie. I didn't just get the cookie. I had to prove for the cookie. My father had some problem he was a little bit on the molesting side of things. So by the time I was 7 years old, I told him to never back. And I never saw him again. He passed away, I think last year, homeless, drunk with COVID in Brazil. Somebody found him, and then obviously I got, notified because I'm the only child. So from there, I married someone in America that I with him, and later on he finally showed himself, and he became or he was already a heavily bipolar man, which was extremely violent. So I ended up in a women's shelter in Hawaii with my 5-year-old for 3 months, and they understood that the victim and the abuser, you can't have a victim without an abuser, and you can't have an abuser without a victim. So I was part of a cycle, and then from there I moved to San Francisco. And I love to say this part of the story because within a year, I organized 2 30,000 people festivals. So exactly a year before that, I was in a women's shelter. He burned everything I had. I left with a backpack and a 5-year-old. A year I was organizing a 30 people festival. And I understood there that don't let things break you, but do let those things come through you and make you better, stronger, understand what you don't want anymore. So then as a chef, in San Francisco, I went all the way to becoming an executive chef, opened a couple of restaurants. And in that journey, I encountered a few executive chefs, which I was then, a sous chef or a line cook, that were extremely violent and abusive in the kitchen. And I learned that day, I remember the exact day where I say, hey, hold on a minute. This man is not my husband. I'm being treated kind of the same way. This is a pattern. So until we figured it out, those patterns that we are running ourselves into, every time, every 5 years, here you are again into the same place. It means life, God, whatever you want to believe in, is telling you that you have not learned your lesson yet, that you need to understand what's going on so then you can hop off, you know, that vicious cycle that keeps happening. So I am now happily married with an amazing man that is very chill, and, you know, my children are happy. But I have been called a bitch. I have been called opinionated. I have been called all kinds of names. And guess what? That is right. I'm not allowed. And who have a thing going on here with someone that just happened. And it's like, you are not allowed to make yourself. Use my voice to tell you and to bring to you, because you are also then on the pattern of abusing somebody else. And I would like to not hate you. I would like to try to help you understand that you are doing this to people, and maybe you can jump yourself out of that cycle that you be, you know. So, and then that brings back to the pandemic, which is, you know, as the farmer and all the fights that I do out there, our broke. Okay. We had no food. We had no toilet paper here in the United States for some reason. People are like, I can't live without toilet paper. It was a big deal. Our systems broke. I was need to be on the hamster wheel, going and going and going. One day, boom, we're sitting in the house and thinking, oh, what do I do next? Right. And so I think it gave us time to really think about of what is important in life. Where do we want to go? Who do we want to be? And what is the mark we want to do in the world? You know, so using the pandemic time to I hate the word reinventing, because we always been there. I think it's just allowing those things. It's like, I always wanted to play, you know, an instrument, but I can't because I am so busy with blah, 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 blah. Well, you know, here you are. Did you start playing that instrument? If you haven't, you had the time to do it. So what's stopping you? You know, and in the food part of things, like, let's teach our children how to grow a tomato plant. Let's teach our children how to fry an egg, you know, because Americans, worse than anywhere else in the world, Americans got stuck at home, restaurants, opening cans of food because they don't know how to cook, and beans, the basic staples, because they always go somewhere else. So this, you know, society of everybody brings me what I need and I do is work, make the money, I give you the money. What happens if the light doesn't turn on? What happens, you know? So make a plan, figure it out, put a little pot next to your window, and you like salsa, then grow one tomato plant, go one cilantro plant and one onion plant. And then you would have a bunch of salsa for your family. Teach your children how to do that. Make dinners, you know, the little one, we do restaurant Fridays breakfast. So she writes a menu, and she draws the menu and she writes it. And she's like, okay, we're having pancakes and this and that. And I want some peaches in there. So she goes, she's my sous chef in the kitchen. And dad has to stay up there for longer than he wants to, because he's like, I need to go fix the side or something. And so we put his meal and he comes down and we're like, okay, make your choice of what you want of the menu. And I'm like, choose the top one, because that's what we cooked. He's like, okay, I'll take the top one. And she serves it and she understands, again, what I said before, which is they provide us something. Make them call grandmothers on birthdays, Christmas, make them write a card, make them make a little present. You know, it's showing them who they need to be in the world for the future. So we can break, you know, more with the male children. I come from a chauvinistic country, huge, where, you know, the boys were sitting down and we were doing the dishes. That's just how it is. I learned how to cook because my grandmother told me that is a essential thing to learn if you're going to become a great wife. And that's why I learned how to cook, was because to be a good wife. So I think that teaching the boy that, hey, maybe I have a wife for a while and I won't be here. You need to learn how to fry an egg, you know? So I think kind of breaking those systems that patriarchic systems and that we had are really important. And we got the time now. We have so much time to hang out with our children, you know. And I just want to finish with hooray for teachers. We all now know what the teachers go through to try to teach our children. So if they don't listen, if they talk back, if they say, screw that, I don't want to do it, you are the one teaching them how to be that way. Your poor thing needs to go through it. So, let's use this time to kind of grow all of us in our family. Thank you. You're mute, love.
Hate it when this happens. So we've come to our hour in this session, but it doesn't mean that this is over. We've got final comments and lots of feedback in the thread. I've been trying to keep up. Do any of you have any questions in who are following this thread for our panelists at the moment? Final questions. Okay, so there's just a lot of comments and threads at the moment, just feedback, and I hope this has been as rewarding for everyone listening as it has been for me and everyone that's been on this panel. For those of you who are tuning in with us on this thread, I believe there's like a bottom arrow, and you can see the write-up of all of our panelists underneath. And let's see. Do you find it, Katie? Can you see an arrow, down arrow? No? Okay. So information on Katie's podcasts will be included. Susanna's practice will be included for those of you that want to reach out. Alicia, your comments. Yep, I see it. There's a way to include it in the notes below. There you go, Craft Food Podcast. Why don't you guys announce for those listening how they can reach out to you and where they can find your work, and any takeaways that you might want to share as we close this out. 1 second. So let's start with you, Alicia. We'll just go in order, and then I will look into this. Let's see if I can find it.
I'm Alicia Brown, the Joy Guru again. So everything about me, all the brands associated with me, you can go to thejoyguru.net. The one word or the one thought I leave you with is to understand we're talking about mental health and your well-being. That's up to you. So don't let stigma, don't let what other people are telling you be something that keeps you from what you actually need and for what you need to feel good about yourself. I think Susanna said earlier, mental cleansing. So if we talk about health and healthy, that means there's steps and things you have to take. That does involve other people, but that's not a bad thing. You're strengthening your mental health versus focusing on you're ill and you're sick. You're strengthening your mental health and your mindset and what you need. So that's not a bad thing, regardless of what other people think about it. Change your own narrative so you can have what you actually want and be your best self.
Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. And we're going to follow up once this is over. You've all received invites. You've received an invite to tonight's reception, and I will see you again soon after. Susanna, final takeaways, and how do people reach you?
You can reach me at ceremoniameditation.com. I put it in the chat. I don't know if it's possible to attach the YouTube links. I directed a few videos about women's mental health and different issues we struggle with. So I invite you to watch them. I have many more planned, so stay tuned. And one last thing I would like to mention, especially to the mothers watching, is that we were not meant to do it alone. It really takes a village to raise children, have a household, have a professional life, and everything that we're dealing with, right? Back in the day, we were not expected to do it alone. We would have our village literally to help us out. So I know that it's hard in the pandemic, but reach out to your people, ask for help, find your village, whatever that means to you, and don't do it alone if possible. It makes things so much easier. And don't be afraid to hand your baby over to your cousin or to your sister or to your mom. That's it. Thank you so much for this opportunity. And yeah, let's keep the conversation going.
And Susanna, before we leave, you are still doing virtual meditation trainings during the pandemic, correct?
Yes, I teach online both hypnobirthing and meditation. I much prefer doing it in person, but I'm grateful that I can reach people from all around the world. And it's hilarious, especially hypnobirthing, because I'm in this room bouncing on the birthing ball and demonstrating massage points on my feet and demonstrating big birthing exercises and positions. So it is hilarious. It's very entertaining and very educational. So I invite anybody who's interested to join me.
Fantastic. Katie, final comments and how can they reach you and learn more?
Yeah, so it's womensmeditationnetwork.com. That's my website where you'll find everything. But if you're currently a podcast listener, literally just go type in meditation for women and all of the podcasts should come up. So go listen. Final insights really are just to, just take care of yourself. There's no wrong way to take care of yourself. When you know what you need, there's no wrong way to take care of yourself. So, taking care of ourselves from the inside out in whatever manner and whatever way you need to do that is totally the right way. So thank you so much. I'm very, very grateful to be here.
Thank you. That's beautiful and brilliant advice, as you are. Michelle, my love.
So two things that I do for myself, and I would like to just, tell them and listen. One, right before I put my foot on the ground when I wake up and I'm about to get up, I force myself to say 5 things that I'm grateful for before I put my foot on the ground. I think that brings me and brings me back to where I need to be. And number 2 is learning to allow yourself to say, I need a minute. Just give me a minute. I'll be right back. Because sometimes we're express exactly what we mean at the time, and there's other feelings that are behind it. A lot of the times I tell the kids, hold on, I'll be right back. I tell that to my husband, to working people, I'll be right back and I will talk to you then. So my podcast is craftfoodpodcast.com. And Instagram is kind of my hub for everything. So Chef Michelle Fox is MICHELLEE Fox, Chef Michelle Fox. And in there's all my information, and anybody listening and hear my DMs are always welcome. You're always welcome to send me a message and I will always respond, and we can talk about whatever it is that you would like to talk about.
Amazing. So my last comment in this entire session today is the power of no. And we as women are yes people in general. We say yes, yes, yes to everyone. And sometimes it is okay to take a moment and say, this isn't gonna work for me. My spirit, I can't honor myself if I do this. And sometimes it's okay to say no and just, again, know yourself so well to the point where you can say that, establish your boundaries. And that's the one thing that I take away from this pandemic is everything's going to come right at you, but you've got to know what you absolutely need and want versus, things that are just there. So honestly, honor you. Grateful for everyone watching, listening, being present with us today. And this is just the beginning of our conversation. Our next summit's going to be June 22nd to the 24th. And I can't wait to see you all again. It's going to be too long. 6 weeks is a long time. You'll be hearing from us. If you want to stay connected, we've got a newsletter, thestateofwomen.org. We've got our mobile apps where we're loading podcasts, adding more content. Michelle's podcast is on there. Katie's podcast is on there. I believe yours is there too, Alicia. So we shall stay connected and ground yourself. This is the best time. It's you time. Pandemic is forcing us to have you time. So thank you, everyone. I'm going to let you go unwillingly, but we'll see you again soon. Hopefully all sessions recorded. You can find us again on Digital Library. Thank you.